Welcome back. We're going to do the Boogie Man today. We already shot this once, but Jeremy said I had lack of focus, or it was out of focus, something like that. I don't remember, but I'm glad we aren't using the old one because I did a white one the last time, and I just got back from the white. I was down there for about a month, and I was, the Boogie Man has been around for quite a while, and when I'm on the way back, when they told me we had to reshoot this, I got thinking about, and I was telling the guys this morning that I noticed something, that whenever we're struggling, whenever things aren't doing what they're supposed to, we put on the Olive Boogie Man. And it happened 3 times for that time we were down in the white, and Johnny reminded me that all of his really big fish over on the Jeff and the Big Hole, when things were tough, have always come on. I don't know why, but we go to this Olive Boogie Man. And so I'm kind of glad we're reshooting it. It's one of these flies. There's a couple things about the Boogie that's really cool. One, it's double articulated. And not that it has 3 hooks to make it a double articulated, but it articulates in 2 ways. One, it's just a standard articulated fly, so it serpentines like this. But because of the flank, it's got a double flank feather on it. You can see on the top here, it's got 2 flanks. And what those do is they cup the water. And so it articulates like this, but it also does this Chinese dragon thing up and down, and it just has a whole separate, different type of articulated swim when it's in the water. We also do this in the minis, which is really cool for the trout spay people or people that just don't want to use really big flies. This isn't a giant fly. I actually do this in triple for myself, and they're really cool. I just started doing them last year. But the double, that's a little bit for the trout spay world, but the little ones are great. I also was fishing that. I fished that down in the white because I wasn't doing really well. And it's a really big river down there. And people are afraid to take the smaller bugs in big water. And I didn't get any really big fish on it, but I did get fish when I wasn't getting fish on the bigger profile. So something to keep in mind. But this fly is really cool. One other thing about the Boogie Man is that kind of a thing for me is that one of my bad habits, I don't like to see people get pigeonholed in their fishing techniques, like always doing this or always doing that. But one of my bad habits is I tend to start early morning with a white Boogie Man. I don't know if it's because I can see it so much better, because I dig seeing them eat it, or I don't know. It's a confidence thing for me. Usually I just start with it. I never stay with a fly very long if it's not working. But it's, for me, the white Boogie Man is one of those things that's just it goes on very early in the morning. So it's a pretty straightforward fly. We're going to do this. We're going to have the 70-50 hook. This is my streamer hook from MFC. We're going to have this in a 4 and a 1. The tail's going to be, and again, we do this in a lot of colors. And so basically, you just you're going to match your bodies to your hackles to your tails. This is what I'm doing olive, so I'm going to have an olive tail. If you want, lighter, darker, that's all up to you. And as usual, I'm always using the 100 GSP. But anyway, we're going to have the olive Marabou, just strung Marabou. And I noticed this, and I really did notice on the production tie of this fly, that they were using, which one is this? The Fire Tiger Green. I always use copper on my olive. Always have. I saw it in here. I've been fishing them for a year. When I'm taking them off the shelf instead of tying my own, I didn't really notice. But for me personally, this goes back, I was telling Jeremy earlier today, is that this goes back to Russ Madden's original circus peanut. And it was the first time I ever saw the copper and olive blend, and he puts that in his tail. And in anything olive, I have copper. That was such a great combo. And so that's what I'm going to use on this one. And then on the hackle, it's going to be strung. But I also have 2 things here. I don't know, did I wiggle that around? I'm going to have this, the long strung hackle. And a lot of times when we do this, because we do packages of all these flies, we can sub them out. And you feel free to sub stuff. And I wanted to say this is what I'm using here on this one, because I like this brown, but it's also got that champagne-y tip. And as I've said in a lot of my videos, I like to go, like, the body is going to be this medium olive crystal or cactus chenille, And the cactus chenille, and what you'll see on my own flies, if you're looking at my fly box, I tend to take my bodies and make them light, and I tone over them with a darker stripe. So I use a darker hackle over a lighter body. Now the production ones have a little bit more, it's a UV olive, darker olive, but you know, feel free to just play with that stuff. I mean, it just helps to get used to, you know, you'll find a combo, maybe where you live, they got a little bit different belly or something, you'll find a combo. But this is one thing, but I talk about this a lot, and it's the American saddle, because we tie, you know, people are always asking me how to get started, and I tell people, buy the materials that you're going to use for a particular fly, and then sooner or later they'll start overlapping. That way you don't get a bunch of junk you don't use. And I use these American saddles for my belly bumpers, Johnny's Kill Whitey, and I just use it for anything that's the flatliners, all those flies. I'm using this American hackle, and if you look at this is a saddle, and what you're going to see is up in here. This is basically all schlop and feather, right? Is that in focus right there, Jeremy? And so you've got all this schlopping up here, and then you got the bottom of this thing that's just like strung hackle. That makes this thing incredibly versatile. They're not very expensive to start with, they're $30, but you tend to use all the schlopping up here for the flatliners and the things that are going to do deceiver style tails, and you're left with all this, just a myriad of, just a ton of hackle, and it's got that same thing I was talking about in this particular. It's got the kind of the tip of the champagne-y colors on the tip and the olive. So it's something you could sub out. Don't just because, you know, I harp about that. Just because I say I'm using strung hackle doesn't mean you can't use schlopping. When I get to the front of these, sometimes I tend to look for a little bit more schlopping, and usually there's a little bit of both in the package. But anyway, we're going to counter wrap with a copper Brassie. We're going to have flank feathers on top, which makes this fly so unique. And this is the wood duck gold. They're Mallard flank. It's wood duck dyed gold. And I think this is a huge part of this fly. The only one that doesn't have this in it is the white one, which is natural. But one of the unique things about this fly, and the reason I say I use it in the morning, because I can see it, but when you go into the black and the olive, and you see this wood duck gold top on it, I don't know if that's what makes it so effective. I just know you can track it so well, and I've done it with other colors and they don't work as well. There's something, I don't know what it is, but there's something about that gold that really is a trigger point, and you can see it forever. I mean, you put on a black Boogie Man with this thing on it, and you can see that little feather on the top all the way around, all the way back. And so the next thing is going to be the eyes. Is just double pupil, you know, whatever you like. I put yellow on my yellow on the olive ones. I use the the red and black on the white ones, the red on the black, and it's whatever you like. And the last thing we're going to have is it's going to have a wool head. Now I'm going to use this Spirit River wool, because I'm going to show you. I'm going to do a little quick tutorial on this when we get to it. But this particular stuff is really handy. And when we get to it, because this is regular wool. This is what I tied with forever. I still use this stuff. But I'm going to show you why I like this stuff, because it's already hanked out. It's made for you to use. You don't have to do any sorting whatsoever. So, enough of that. So, and then I'm going to have 19 strand Surflon for my articulation wear. So, got the 1750 here, got the GSP 100. I'm going to start right here, just like always, leaving yourself space for your, I've said this many times in these videos, but I tie crooked so that camera can see it, so I'm kind of like setting over here so Jeremy can see for the close-up stuff behind me. So I don't usually tie at an angle like this. So with all of my tails, everything I do that I can think of right now, I use two plumes, and I've said it on all of them, that you've got to sort through this. And if you find one, like you go through and you know, usually you get a 20-30% drop on this stuff. It's usually, you know, you've got to sort through it. But if you get a really, really extra thick plume and you want to put it in like that, hallelujah. I don't tend to do it. I just like to, because I almost always put my Flashabou in between the two. And so, but I want to show you a couple things about this. And because when I work with this stuff, I only use the tips, right? I just use the tip. I don't use the side of the feather. I don't use all this stuff down here. I don't use any of this junk that's down on the side. Now, if you wanted to sort it and pick it and put it on there, that's fine. But I just like to use the tips. And I'm looking for these feathers to be all the same length like that at the tip when I pull them up. And so that gives me nice consistent tails. They're nice and whippy. Show you a little trick here that Tom Gingrich sent me. I talked about this. Did we show this before?
I don't remember.
I don't know. I couldn't remember Tom's name when I did this video. I felt like such an idiot because he sent me this thing. This is the coolest invention you've ever seen. Because for those of you who've watched my videos, I'm always talking about not putting this in your mouth and making, licking this stuff because there's carcinogens and it makes you goofy like Johnny. But Tom sent me this because he saw that. And I thought this is maybe one of the smartest things I've ever seen in my life because it stops you from putting the Marabou in your mouth. It's a little sponge you cut round in one of these little fly cups. Put a piece of Velcro on the bottom of it so you can set it wherever you want, right? So you set it here. So instead of putting this in your mouth and doing this, you just go over here and you just pull it. And so you don't need it soaking wet. You just need it damp because then you can see it and you're not working with all this crap, just floating around. And so this sponge I wet. I literally wet that before. I've been gone for a month now. I haven't shot anything in a month. That cup was closed on my thing and it was wet and still nice and damp. So it's not like you got to mess with it too much. But what it does allows you to work with something that's nice and clean and you can, because we're always measuring this stuff. We're going to put this thing up here. We want it to be the length of the hook. And if you're going to err long in this because you want a nice whippy tail, right? So we're going to come in here, be the length of the hook. We're going to come back here. I'm going to take a pinch wrap, a set, and an anchor. And then we're going to work it up the back side of the hook. I do this with all my flies. I work up the back side and just nice tight wraps right up to where we're going to want our head to be. Come here. And so nice and clean, tight wraps coming back. Come back almost about a third of the way from the back here. Where's my lighter? We're going to take some Brassie copper, Brassie being the size. We're going to come back here. I'm not quite, see, I've left a little bit of space here. I'm going to tie in my copper wire. I'm going to put it on the back side. I'm going to pull this over like that. When you trim this off right here, I don't bring it all the way. Come back to here, right where we started. Now our wire's tied in. Go back just a little bit forward. I'm going to take some copper Flashabou. I talk about this thing all the time. I love this tool. We talk about these organizational things. People are always writing me and calling me and say, man, how do you keep your stuff so organized? Well, first of all, I get lots of time to do it before you see this. But I tend to keep them pretty, but this is one of them. It's a little trick. You take these things. I got some angel hair in there. But you take your Flashabou, right? You take it out of the package and it's all loose. And we start cutting on it. When you use it like this, you just take these things, you put them in the tube, and it's done. I mean, this stuff, you can put 5 of these in here at a time. So I'm just going to grab a handful of these. I'm going to end up with about 4 or 5 strands of this. I'm going to double it over. And this, I like to wet this too, just so I can see that I'll cut it all the same length. And I'll put this in here, and I want it to be just slightly, if anything, just a touch longer than the tail. If you want to make it the same length as the tail, that's fine. So I'm just going to put 2 or 3 wraps, come back here, nice and tight, right to where I can come up here. I can see the other side. Now they're the same length. Now we're going to take this other Marabou plume, take Tom's little tool here, and take this. We don't have to measure this one. We're going to lay it just over the top, so it's just slightly covering that Flashabou. We're going to blend it. I'm going to take a pinch wrap, come in here, see I just pinched over top, let it fold around it, set, anchor. Now I'm going to hold this one on this side, and I'm going to make these wraps, and I do this for a reason. You'll watch people take a full plume of Marabou. I've seen this on a couple videos, and it really bugs me because you'll see them take a full plume, and they'll take, this one's even extra rotten. They'll take that full plume of Marabou like this, they'll put it on here, and they'll start wrapping this. And they'll wrap all of this junk, right? All this stuff here that I've already pulled all that off of here. They'll wrap that in there. And you can see it in the video. You can see it in people's flies if you look at them. It makes a really soft body. And when you have, what a soft body means is your thread's not packed down around that hook. And so what will happen is the water gets in there and everything starts expanding. Your fly will get soft and it'll start to twist, and you can grab people's bodies. You know, if you see a fly like that, and you can actually spin the body, which is a telltale of a poorly tied fly. If you don't have a tight body on this thing, it's just going to, once it gets wet, you start fishing it, tooth into the thing, and it's going to come unraveled. And it's basically just saying that you're not taking the time to do it right. So here we're back to what we're doing. I hope you all saw that. But when I cut that, did you see that?
You just snip out the wire.
I snipped my wire off. Well, we deal in reality here. So when I cut that Flashabou off, I cut my wire off. I didn't see it. I'm blind. I can do whatever I want. Oh, I can't either. So we'll just do that trick twice. So we're going to come back here right to that third. And I don't like to, that's really embarrassing actually. But it's the first mistake I've ever made. Just ask Johnny. So I'm going to double that wire over again. Come back here. Nice and tight. Flip that in. So, and the reason you double that wire over, see now I got a little bit of bulk there that I'm not real big on that. I got just a little bit more taper. Everything's taper with this. We're going to cover it all up with this stuff anyway. But the reason you tie that in and wrap it back is so that if you just tie it in, it's really slick. You give it a pull and it pops out, you're in trouble because we're going to use this to set the hackle when we go through it because we're going to do it. We're going to counter wrap this hackle. I'll show you a little trick with this stuff. If you take this and cut a hole in the back of this bag back here and stick that through there. Well, if I hadn't done that in advance, stick that through there. Well, that didn't take an hour. If you do that, you can just have, it'll stay in the bag and you won't have this stuff all over the place. So we're going to take this stuff and we're going to strip the ends of this off. Can you see that, Jeremy?
Bring it down a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah, right in here. So we're going to strip this off, so we're only tying in that cotton thread. Some of them are nylon, some are cotton. And we're going to just tie this in, so we're going to build no bulk with our materials. And set that right there. And we're just going to work for it. We're going to be nice and tight. And now we can tie this in. Tell me if I'm covering this up. And so, trying to not get that covered. I want to show you something when we tie this in. So make our first wrap, as always, that's the most important wrap. And it's mostly a visual thing. So what you don't want to do is have a big gap on the back side of this. So you do one complete turn around it. And then I want you to watch right here. Hold your tail and watch. See how that stretches? Just give it a slight stretch. You don't have to reef on it. And then about every fourth or fifth one, give it a pull. Nice and tight. Everyone, what you're doing when you do that, nice and tight, set it in there. Leave room for your hackle and finish the head. So I've got one turn around it. I'm going to put these two here. I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut it really close. And I doubt you can see it, but I got it back down just to the two, they're cotton threads, that's all they are. It's just like doing a dubbing brush. You put a thread down and your material's in front of it and lay it over and they spin it, and so it's all trapped in there. So we're just getting that gone. Now I'm just going to, so I don't have any bulk in my head now. I've just got that little fine spot there to work with. Now we're going to take this strung hackle. And I'll show you something here. Almost always, when you work with this stuff, you're going to see that this stuff in here, if you look closely, is that going? Can you see that pretty well? Mm-hmm. If you look in here, you'll see, even though this is strung hackle, right? Generally speaking, that's the trimmings around the base of the neck, and when you look at the saddles, it'll be these ones down here, the shorter ones, but this is almost all strung neck hackle. And what it is the trimmings. They pull them off when they're cutting the shape to your neck, and they're just the trimmings. And if you look, you'll see there's almost always, like right here, these are all schloppity, meaning they're thicker, webbier, not quite so shiny. For me personally, what I tend to do is I like the shiny ones in the tail end of this, so I just look for one that's nice and shiny and got that champagne edge to it, meaning that kind of goldy edge. So I'm just going to look at these, find one that I think fits well. Doesn't have to be, and again, like I said earlier, I like to tone my flies with this hackle. So I got a lighter body, and I'm going to take one of these strung neck hackles that's kind of shiny and a little darker than the body itself, and I'll get a tone on this fly.
You kick that chenille out of the back of that.
Yeah, kick that out of here. I'll kick all this junk out of here. It's kind of bugging me anyway. Stuff drives me crazy. Get out of here. Go. All right, so now we're going to come in here. You can see the feather, and I'm going to get rid of this is called aftershaft, this fuzzy stuff down here. And I want to just, on any hackle, I mean, this is just a simple technique. When you bend these things, if they bend like that and stay bent, you're in trouble. Do not just come in here and make sure that they're nice and flexible. You don't really have to deal with this nowadays as much as you did in the old days, but when the hackle wasn't as good as it is now. But if you get tying and it cracks, it's going to unravel a little bit on you. We're going to have it counter set anyway. So or counter wrapped, I mean. So I'm going to come in here, I cut this off. I'm going to come in from the right side, I'm going to butt that up against my thread. Right there, come from the other side. Kind of got behind myself. From right to left, and come from left to right. Do not catch that stem. Do not catch the back part. Give it 2 turns and just crank it. Now your hackle is nice and set. What you're going to see is it's in its rotation. It's the way it's going to go. You're not taking the hackle from here, doing a 90, and then making it go like that. You're getting it in the rotation that it's going to follow when you put it on the feather, on the fly. So you're going to take this first one, and we're going to do the same thing. I want one complete turn right here. Do not rush that. Get one, and then give it a nice tug, and make sure it's nice and tight. Come back, just set your hackle at an angle. Make sure we left lots of room to get our feathers in here. Going to come around, we're going to hook that right there. This is an important turn right here, because this is the one that's going to keep the feather from coming undone. So we're going to set this just like I did with when I set the hackle, I went forward, I just put it at about a 30-degree angle and just let it go, or back, I let it go back. Now I'm going to set the wire at the same angle, and we're going to just kind of rip through here, just go, go, go. Same number of turns. Get up here because we're going with the turn of the thread. I went twice around, broke it off, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to catch it with my thread now. And I'm going right over top of that wire. I've seen people do this reverse. And so sometimes you'll see, if you wrap the materials counterclockwise, it'd be okay. But you'll see people do that, and then they come with their wire backwards. And the problem with that is when you go to tighten that down, when you go to tie it off, your thread's pushing the wire and loosening it up. It's not, this way it's going in the same direction, and it's nice and tight on both directions. All right, I think I got that. So now I'm going to give this nice tight wraps. I'm going to nice clean spot to lay this hackle on. It's a little bit of overkill right there that I just put on. So now we're going to go into the flank feathers. And there is truly a ginormous difference in flank feathers. And I know a lot of you people write in and tell me that that it's one of the hardest things to find is good flank feather, because you buy a bag of it sometimes. I did it in where it was post balls. I stopped at the Cabela store and I bought this bag of, I just forgot mine. I was going to do a tying seminar and I bought this bag. It was like this big. And I just grabbed the only one they had. I think I found 5 feathers in the whole bag. The rest of them were great if I was going to do catskill style wings, but to do what we do, you really have to be able to sort your materials. And so we do one called the Cougar Pack. We sort them, but you really have to understand what you're looking for. And so what I want, where's that feather? So we need nice, I'm going to just set these up here, nice flat feathers that have no twist to them. So I grabbed a couple that aren't perfect, and I'm going to show you something. And you can try to straighten these out. This one's got, see how it's got a little bit of curve? It's not bad when it goes this way. When the feather's cupped and curved that way, that's fine. It sits right over top. What you don't want to find is one with a twist like this. And you can see this, and I'll show you on both sides on the close-up. But you can see it's twisting like that. And that feather will make your fly track the same way the twist of the feather does. And so these here, you really want to try to eliminate those, but don't just throw it out. If you go and you look, and I just did on this one, all the twist is in the middle. If I come up here, especially if you do a lot of the mini boogies, you go up here, you do get a nice straight. You can see now this part of the feather is nice and straight. It's got a nice straight shaft down the middle of the feather. And so you can get away with that. If they're really, really, really bent like this, you can take a hot needle, not just warm, not hot, and just put it on the back side of it and go like that. It'll straighten it right out. I've never been able to get the twist out, but I can get that bend this way. So what I'm looking for is just, if you've got really good feathers, you can get away with just one. If you want to set 2, that's fine too. And as always, if you've got 2, when you're working with flanks, if you've got 2, if you're going to do a double set, use the poorer quality, shorter one on the bottom. And so and this is just for stabilization, right? It's just going to keep it. And so if I'm going to use 2 sets, I usually, and the one's not as good as the other, put it underneath here, tie it in. That'll give you that nice cup. I'll do it right now. This feather's fine. I just did that so you could show you. One more thing. When you work with feathers, these on mallard flanks, they're really flat. They're not round at all. But if they are, you don't have to chew it. Get a pair of hemos. But these are super. Can you see that close up, Jeremy? These things are flat. They're not round at all. You get up in here and you can see. So that's the flanks. They tie in really smooth. You won't have any problems with these. Get out of the way. So we're going to tie this first one in short. And with any feather set like this, do not reef on it right at the beginning. Don't try to get it super tight in your first couple turns, because it'll have a tendency to want to roll itself over to the side like that. Give yourself 2 or 3 turns, then just progressively get tighter as you get to the eye. It'll set it. It'll be nice and compressed. Come in here. Grab your longer one. That is a longer one. Had a whole bunch of them sitting there. Take all this stuff off of here. And again, you do not have to double these up. I'm just going to set them double to show you. If you've got this is a great feather. You would not have to double these up in any way. But I wanted it longer on this back one. So I'm going to come in here. I'm going to get back to where I belong. It's not easy tying sideways. Okay, come back here. This one's going to be just slightly longer than the other one. I prefer that to come back just about to the tail. I'm setting it. I'm just letting it sit on top. I'm not fighting this. I'm giving it, I've got 3 turns on it now. Make sure it's right on top, and then I'll progressively, these will get tighter right at the eye. Now it's nice and flush. Come back in here. Give it its head. finish it off. And away she goes. All right. Have some 17-pound Surflon here. You're going to want to use about 6 inches of this just to get it set. We're going to take our number 1 70/50. Okay, take a medium triple pupil. Don't ever put these in your mouth because, especially if you live in California, because on the package it says that it causes cancer in California. Where else? I think, yes, just in the state of California it says. Not sure why only there, but ooh, time out. Trimming. So when I put these on, I put 3 turns around the top. I let it roll over, come underneath here, do 3 turns the other way. Got a little bit ahead of myself where I wanted that. This isn't real critical. I'm just kind of setting them, and you'll see me say this on every video I do. Set them, take one, and use them as an example. And if you want to use, you can go extra large on these if you want. I use the large usually. And so what I did was on top, I did 3 turns. I let them roll over, just held on to it. And then I went the other way 3 turns. And then I'm just putting a couple underneath it like this. I'm not trying to set this eye. I'm going to set this eye with my wire when we get to it. And so we're going to sit here and look over top of it. And I like to look straight over the top and make sure that it's kind of pretty close to the center of the hook, right? Because especially if you go to the extra large, if you tie, sometimes you'll see them, they're pretty long. If you tie one off to the backside, it'll tip your fly sideways, and we don't want that. All right, where'd that wire go? So now we're going to take this back one, and we're going to double that over. And by the way, I got a call from MFC, people that do the hooks for me. They're shipped. There's a new hook coming out. I don't even know what the number of it is, but if you look at the hooks, this is called a ring eye or a flat eye, right? And so if you look at it, it's flat this way. When you're doing articulations, it's such a pain to do this with the flat eye. And by the way, you should have glued that, put some head cement on that. I didn't do it. With this flat eye, I already kinked that. I like to take this and I kink it like this so it sits in there. But now we've got to tie this on the side. And it's one of the most common questions I get is that, how do you get that in and not have it tilt to the side and blah, blah, blah. And with the new hook, instead of it being ring eye like this, it's going to be vertical like that. The new hooks are, instead of being flat like this and having to tie your wire on the side, the new ones are going to be like this, so you go around on top of the hook. It'll make your articulation so much easier, you won't believe it. It's just, there's I think it's an 1850. I've tied with that forever, some of my smaller ones, and that was a Daiichi. Daiichi or Daiichi? Daiichi. And that, that one was really cool, and I've always wondered why we didn't do that, why we didn't have more of them. It's the only one I knew of. So I got MFC to build those hooks for me. And so from maybe it's Johnny's favorite holiday tomorrow. It's Valentine's Day. He digs Valentine's Day. He just thinks it's wonderful. He buys stuff like a year in advance. But anyway, I think we'll have them by the end of February. So anyway, here we go. We got this. I forgot something. It's been a long time since I've tied. Where are my little beads at? I forgot the beads. There they are. Don't put this stuff in your mouth. So usually I use copper beads, or root beer beads actually. They look kind of copperish. This one is going to have a red bead because I don't know where my copper beads are. that's a little one. You have to sort these things. The beads, I usually use 2 on these, and there's not really, there's not a lot of consistency to the beads. And so somebody was at a show a couple, I don't know, it was last year sometime, they said, man, these beads I get are, they're different sizes. I don't know, how come yours are all the same? Well, I sort them, but these aren't, they're never the same. They're just kind of random. So here I've got the 2 beads, and I'm keeping this wire parallel to each other. Do not let the wire, that bead, and this just something, I like that had 1 really big bead, and that's all I really needed, and so I took off the second one. This is just, it's however you like the look of it. I didn't like that second bead. It was a little long. There was 2 pretty fat ones, and so I just took, I'm going to use 1. The original function to the bead, and it's had nothing to do with the actual articulation. The original bead, the reason we put them in was because, and I'm going to do it in here, I'm going to put a little bit of Flashabou in here. All right, in the original one, we had Flashabou right, it was a skirt cover is what it was called. And it would get caught up in the wire. And so, it would fish for a while, and then suddenly it would be stuck in the wire. So we put the beads on to stop that. And then we realized it had a double function. It gave that a little bit of rigidity, and it didn't swing around itself as much. So, but it's, one's going to be fine. So I've got it on the side of the hook, so it's both of those are running parallel to the hook shank. And I pull this up until it touches, first touches right there, and I've got a bead width behind there and in front of there. Basically, it's just how I do mine. I don't like them really long. You don't want it so tight that it doesn't articulate, but you don't want it so long that it wraps around the hook. So it's set nice right there. Got this on the side. Just make sure that's parallel, to the hook shank. Again, when we get this new hook, it's going to be so much easier because you can tie it in right on the top, and you won't have to deal with all this keeping it on the edge thing. So now I'm going to just let this wire nice and tight wraps. That's really important because if you don't have really tight wraps on this thing, if you get a fish and you usually get it on the front hook, but if you get it on the back and you starts torquing on you, it can make it right off to one side. But we're just going to go forward here. Once you get moving, coming to the top, let it fold. You see, I'm letting it roll towards the top of the hook as I get up by the eyes. Now we're going to come up here, take both pieces of wire, run them right through the hook, eye. Now come forward right to the eye, right to that eye. Take your thumbnail and push it into the bottom just so it's nice and tight. And now what we're going to do is double check right now, make sure your eyes are where you want them. And I'm going to go right back as close as I can. Can you see that, Jeremy? To the eye. I'm going as close as I can to the eyes right now. All right? And I've got this, that's as far as I can go. Now I'm going to jump over the top, and I don't know where we could possibly get this, but I'm going to come over the top, and I make one, and I pull back towards the eyes. What that's doing is it's cupping this wire around this thing. And so I'm coming back towards the eye. Now I'm going to work backwards to the halfway point. Now that's assuring you that it's physically impossible. You could not pull this off if you tried. Now you should have a pair of scissors. These are getting pretty old, so I'm not worried about it. Take a pair. It's better if you don't use your scissors, obviously. So now I've got that nice and clean. I got a halfway point. Always looking for tapers. We're building tapers in advance. All right, so I've taken this thing. My eyes are nice and set, and I went as close as I could on the front and as close, and I pulled it back towards the eye in the back. So I've cupped this wire. Now I'm going to go under the hook. You're not going over top of the hook at all. You're going under the hook, and you're going around the eyes in a figure eight. And you just go like that, and you just pull on it. And what I'm doing is I'm squeezing that wire around the eyes. If you use more than GSP 100, like I used to tie with 200, I could pull on this tight enough, and I could pop the eyes right in half. It'd bust the lead right in half. So these things are locked. They're not going anywhere. Back we go. now take your excess. I left that copper Flashabou over here. And I've got 4 strands right now. You don't have to save the excess, but I've got 4 strands. I'm going to put a little bit more than that. I'm going to double this over. So, and I'm dropping 1 or 2 of them, so I'm going to end up with 8 or 10. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to tie this in. This was the skirt. This is the original. This goes back to the original TNA and the TNA bunkers, where we put this internal flash inside it. I saw this on a bass show, and they were talking about tuning skirts for spinner blades, and this little bit of flash that they had in there, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. So that's why I put it in these flies. And I wanted it internal. And so I'm going to take this. I don't want it, and by internal meaning, I don't want it just constantly flashing. I want it to be subdued, and just every once in a while, I want it to flicker a little bit of light. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it on the back side, and I want it to be just slightly longer than the eye of the hook right here. So I'm going to tie this in on the back side. If you wet that stuff, it'll hold together just a little bit. I tie this in on the back side so I can still get a hold of it. And I'm going to get a hold of all of it, and I'm going to pull it so it's just slightly longer than the eye of the hook. All right? We're going to cover it up anyway. Come forward 4 or 5 turns. Take this, fold it back. Ouch, don't hook yourself. I dropped that too. I got to tie more. Come in here and cut it so they're all the same length. Now you can see they're kind of random. They're on both sides of the hook. I'm bleeding all over it. Okay, now we're going to take, we're going to use the after shaft of this bigger feather here. And what we're going to do, we're going to take, and this is just one that fell out. I mean, you can go through here, you could grab any one of these. I'm going to grab one that I'm going to use for the front. So here's one. It's a little bit more schloppany. You can see it's thicker. This one's thick right in here. But I want one that's got that champagne tip to the hackle, like that one. There. So you'll see it's all of them have got this fuzzy stuff. This one I already pulled out. So I'm going to use it, and I'm going to take about 1 inch of it, pull it off, just bundle it. It'll stay nice and clean. And this is going to be our cover. We're going to come over here, cut all the butts off, tie it in on the back side. And what we're doing is we're just covering up this is a little sparse. I might put a little bit more on here. I might use some of that one. But I get the identical size on each side, and all I'm trying to do is make this look somewhat homogeneous, like it's not two flies. I don't want a fly back here and a fly up here. This is just trying to, and you can see it's not a super thick cover. It's just enough to give it a little bit of, it just kind of ties the two in. So I get it wet in here, you can see it just folds over. There's still a little bit of that flash in there. I'm going to hook this in here. So my little material holder's just about shot. I've used it up. Okay, so now we got to get our copper wire tied in. So we're just going to repeat now. We're just going to repeat the steps. You want to go fast forward right now, it's a good time to do it. So we're going to tie in this copper. We moved forward, and what I like to do with this is because I ended you can see right here I'm a little thinner. All right, that's where that wire came back. So I like to get just this side of that. I'm going to tie this in on the back side. Get over here. I'm going to fold this wire over, and I'm just smoothing things out. So I had a little bit of a bump right there with the materials. I'm going to cut it off right where that starts. Try not to cut them both off like last time. Moron. So now we've just cleaned things up. Now we're just going to, what do I do with you? Repeat these steps. Same thing, we're going to strip off the stuff, the chenille. We're going to come in here, make sure that we're tied in right at everything ties in at the gouge. So when your thread's hanging down, all your materials are at the same spot. And just catch those two little threads so you know those are super anchored. Come forward, make sure you stop and leave yourself room for your head. So I'm stopping, again, take your sample, look at it, how big is it going to be, where are you going to tie in your head. Just, you want them all to be the same. And again, I harp on that a lot, but there's a reason when you want things to be the same, other than the fact that they look good. Ideally, what happens is you've come up with a fly, or you're tying a fly, and it's the one that works, right? Everything swims right, and you look at it and you go, I'm going to repeat that. I want it to be the same. And that's why you want consistency in these things. So now I'm going to come in here just like before. One complete turn, hold the skirt, grab it, stretch it, move forward. Didn't like that. Don't be afraid to go backwards. Fourth or fifth one, stretch it. Fourth or fifth one, stretch it. Back. Okay, I'm right about where the head is, and I want this to have a bulkier forward part of the fly. Now I'm going to go back over it to the halfway point, stretch it, come right back over, and I'm building a taper. This is all I'm doing. I'm just building a taper so that I've got a little bit more. I've got a V from the bodybuilding days. V-man taper. Cut that off long, strip the stuff off of it, and just, you can see them right there. Got them nice and tight. Okay. Now, we're going to take that feather I pulled, and I'm going to leave, and I do this on my flies when I'm tying my own. I tend to use just a little bit of that fuzzy stuff. I don't know why, I just like the look of it. I tie that, you'll see some of these things that have got, I stripped all that one off, but you'll see some of them that are really, really, really fuzzy in here. And I might leave 2 turns of this in here, this fuzzy. I actually like this feather. It's got that nice tip. I'm going to use this one. So it's got that nice fuzzy part right there when I first tie it, kind of marabou-ish. I don't know why. I don't know if it fishes better. I just like the way it looks. And so you'll see when I tie my own, I do that frequently. So I'm going to come in here, trim that off, and I've got, you can see the fuzz on it right there. I'm going to come in here in the bottom, and I'm going to butt that left to right, right to left. Don't catch the tip. 2 turns, tighten it down. And now I'm going to get 2 nice fuzzy turns right there, and I'll just start backwards. Miss your hook. Am I covering that, Jeremy?
Nope, you're good.
Okay. So find your wire, hook the tip of that hackle. Make sure this stuff's just nice and fluffed out here. And then just make your way through, set your angle. Just come through right to the front. 2 or 3 turns, pop it off. Now we're going to come in here, and we're going to just catch that wire, flatten things out here, give ourselves a nice base to work our feathers on. Keep everything nice and open. Come in here, cut that off. Take a look at everything. I just really like, I don't know why, I just like that fuzziness of that feather like that. So now we're going to take, we're going to set another set of flanks on this thing. And these, these are the ones that I almost always double the front ones up. And mostly it's just because if one breaks off, fish chomps it really bad. I just want it there, and I like that little bit of extra cup that it gives it. And so, but just like with the other one, pick your feathers that are, the best one you've got. Make sure it goes on top. And all we're looking for, just pretty even. They don't have to be exact, but pretty even. This is a really clean looking feather here. It's just nice on each side. You've got the same amount of hackles. And so it's just, or fibers, And so just pick one and go. So I'm going to put this one right on top. And we definitely, this one definitely needs to marry over top of the other feather. I like it to go about a quarter of the way back on that second feather. So if you look, I want it, here's, there's the halfway point. I want it to go at least that far back into it. So I'm going to take this one, set it on top, same as before. Set one, just get it set there. Don't try to get everything on your first 2 or 3 turns. That's a little bit more than I needed right there. So nice clean spot to work with here. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3. And the third and fourth one, I'm going to start to tighten things up. But before you go on now, look over top of the feather. Make sure that everything is dead on, right on top. We need the shaft of this feather to go straight down the shank of the hook. If it's off to one side, it's just going to do this to you. So, and it'll bug you when you're looking at it too. So nice, clean wraps on that one. Come in, pop that off. Now get your second feather, and this should be your really clean one right here. See how clean that is? It's got even amounts of fibers on each side. It's just it's a pretty feather. Come in here, 1, and then again, make sure that everything's set. 3, 4, come forward, and tighten down as you go. And then again, look right over top of it. If it's not right, grab it, manhandle it now. Don't let it just hope that it's going to get there. It came. While I was talking, it was kind of coming off to one side. I went in here and I just grabbed it and I pulled it over. Both hands, you grab both sides of it, and so I'm nice and clean right now. Come forward. Boom. Make sure everything, as you can see right now, everything's going down. Kind of bent my feathers over there. Okay, now we've got this nice feather underneath here. We've got a nice tight flank feather. Now I want to talk a little bit about wool, because I'm going to use the Spirit River, this UV2 Sculpin wool. I'm going to use this stuff, and I'm going to show you why here. And I use both, but especially when you're looking at buying this, if you're going online, and so you call in and you say you want some ram's wool or Sculpin wool, and so we go over to the thing, and so I've got, get that aside. I want you to see something. And this is like anything else. They're not all the same. And there's nothing we can do about it as the retailer. If I could read your mind and say, yeah, I really like this really nappy stuff here that's really, really like that. No, I don't really like that. I like this stuff here that's got a little bit to it and a little bit more hair. No, I don't like that at all. I like completely the wool. Now, personally, this is what I like. I do not like, let me get that out of the way here. I do not, is that all right there? Mm-hmm. I do not like this stuff that is really nappy like this, that's got this crinkle to it. It's hard to get it out of there, and I always see it. And it's more hair-like. It's not wool. Like, this is super fuzzy, right? It's like the fleece patch, like the sheepskin patch for your flies. It's really woolly, and it really is easy to work with. And you get into this, here's another piece. These are right out of the box of my own stuff, all right? This stuff is super long, and it's almost like hair. This is almost like Icelandic sheep. It's really hair. It's not really fuzzy like this, and so you don't really get the same consistency to your heads, right? And so, and without being able, and you can see, like right here, there's 3 different, they're all shades of olive, but there's 3 different consistencies to this hair. And so without, if you were to call and say, hey, I want some really long stuff, or I want some really fuzzy stuff, we can go over and we can pick it. But to go and just simply say, I need ram's wool, I might send you this and I might send you that. They're all in the same, they're packages. I don't know what you like. But when you go into this UV2 stuff, this stuff came out, I don't know, quite a while ago. When you go into this stuff, it's already hanked, and it comes like this, and it's exactly what I'm looking for. This stuff is the consistency of the kind of fuzzy wool like this stuff here. It's all the same length, and so you don't have some super long tip hair and some of the woolly stuff underneath. it's all exactly what I like to work with. This stuff, there's no waste to this. This is all hanked out. It all comes in a package just like that, and it's really what I'm looking for. I've been using this for probably, I don't know, since they came out, probably 4 years ago, and I really like wool. And by the way, if you wanted to right now, if you wanted to sub this for hair, and I never ever get asked can I sub the hair for wool, or wool for hair? But I do get asked, on my Gazoo Cougar, do you ever think about putting wool on it? Yes, I have. But on this particular fly, I've never seen anybody ask me if they could use hair. And you can. It's kind of fun. I just wanted one that would sink just a little bit quicker. But this stuff doesn't really make, wool doesn't make the fly sink. It holds water and it breaks through the water surface a little bit faster. But the cool thing about wool is that you get to shape it. It's really, really forgiving. And so you can pick at it and trim it and pick at it and make it grow just a little bit after you screw it up a little bit. It's just really forgiving, so it's fun to work with. So on this stuff, I'm going to take I always do the bottom first. We're going to do this. This is just a stack. It's really simple. It's not like working with deer hair where, it kind of scares people off. With this stuff, it's super simple. We're going to take a stack, and I took a piece of this. It's about, I've used this analogy forever. I don't even know if they still have popsicles, but it's about a popsicle stick wide of this stuff. And I'm going to cut that. I'm just going to tie this in on the bottom, and we're going to fold it over the thread just like that. So I just came over the top of the thread. We're going to fold it over. Sticking to my hands are all chapped up from fishing. We're going to come right underneath the bottom here, and I'm going to give it one pull and just two to secure it. Now I'm going to take the top, and you want the top to be thicker than the bottom. We're going to cut most of that bottom off. It's just going to be flat, and we just want it to kind of blend in with the body. The top is going to give you the shape. That's what's going to make the shape of the body, or the head, And so we want a nice thick collar. So you can see here on the bottom when I had about a popsicle, this may be a popsicle or 2 sticks wide. We're coming here and it's all the same length. I'm going to go right there and cut this off so I'm not dealing with all of it. I'm going to come in here and I want to have, you're going to build your pectoral fins out of this. It's going to be, want it to lay back probably a ½ inch or so into here. Same thing. We're going to take this, and the reason I tie the bottom one in first is that, not that you would do this, but if you're going to screw up, I'd rather not see it on the top. If I tie in the top one first and come in and do the bottom and I hook some of the stuff, it would, I got a chance of screwing it up a little bit. And so I'd rather it was not being on my face and seeing my mistake. So I'm going to take this one and I'm going to, give me that, right here, same thing. I'm going to fold over the thread just like that. I'm going to come in and I'm going to set it right where I want to, right? I'm going to look this thing. Before you go crazy, look it over. Is it long enough? If it's not, it's that easy to back up. If things aren't right where you want them, right there's where I want it. Then come in here. It's just that easy to back off. Give me a thread over the top of the thread. Come in, get that little curve to it right there. Go behind the eye and set it. Just pull on that thing. That's all. Don't let off your pressure. Go forward, give it 2 or 3 turns, and you are locked, all right? And so just anchor that in here, come forward. Now I'm going to take this other one back here that's just about a popsicle size. I'm going to come in here, fold it over, come underneath right in the middle of what I have left over here. You can see. There, I screwed that up. I thought I had it in the middle. I didn't have it in the middle. Just back it off. It's that easy. Come in here, fold it over the thread, and this GSP, and by the way, if you wanted to put a little bit of glue on the shank of the hook right now before you did that, it'd be just fine. So I'm going to come in here, set that, I'm going to pull it nice and tight. Now I'm going to take this one, and I got to fill this gap in front of the head here. Same thing. Come in, fold it over, come down nice and tight, holding it. Get the bottom one out of your way. Just come in and just, you're reefing on this stuff, so you don't, never let off your pressure. Now I'm just coming in here and I'm gonna build the head. Get this stuff out of your way. Boom. Johnny says I say boom too much. Okay, probably do. So now we're gonna come in here and we're just gonna pick this out. So we're gonna get things nice and fuzzy. So we've got stuff to trim. And again, if you're worried about it, if you go in, if your tensions aren't really good, maybe not using, 100 thread GSP, something you can really reef on, doesn't hurt you to set a little bit of glue right there and set it. You don't want so much glue that it migrates up into the hair, just enough so it kind of sets your hair and you don't lose any when you start fishing it. So now we got a big clown head here. It's just a big ball of fuzz. First thing I do is I come in here and I cut the bottom nice and flat. Just like I do with the hair work with a deer hair head. I always cut this because I use the bottom, I flatten everything out, and then I come in and I trim the profile. But what I'm gonna do right away is I don't want this hair interrupting with the body back here. And you see I want it to be nice and flat. And I come in here, I don't want to cut that fuzzy stuff off. I want it nice and flat. I still want to be able to see my body. See right here, I can still see my body. Get that hackle out of the way, don't cut that. We put that in there on purpose. So we got a nice flat bottom. You don't have to do this all at once. So now I'm going to come in, I've got the bottom cut flat. Come in here, it's nice and picked out. Our collar's back here. Now we're going to come in, just cut it flat on the front, nice and flat. No, don't worry about, just right at the eye of the hook. There's the eye of the hook right there. We're nice and flat, so it's square. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to trim. Sorry, I'm just used to doing it that way. I'm going to trim the basic shape to this head. And I've got it, the profile's what I cut first. So I've got the nice broad Sculpin style head. So I've got that in there. I've cut the shape, and I just simply come in and just start trimming it back. Trim it back so it's at don't trim your collar. It's not like deer hair. You can't see the difference with this. So you got that in there. We've got this nice shape. Keep that going. And then just take your time, because one bad clip right here. Sorry for behind. So we've got that nice shape to it. And then just start looking at it. Is it where you want it? This is all up to you. This is what fly tying is. This is the fun stuff. You get to come in here, shape this the way you want it. I tend to make mine a little broader than you see a lot of the commercial ones. But that's just, just what I like to do. So I'm coming in here from the bottom, I flipped it upside down, and I'm looking over top of this thing. And I want it to be the same width on each side. I want that head to come back and be collar, so I can see it. I come in here, I still want to be able to see these eyes. Get that out of there. Just gonna cut that out so it's nice and flat. I want to see that reflective value on the bottom. And then I just built the head so it's nice and fluffy. You can see where you want, don't cut your collar, you want that to blend all the way around it. Like the top of it to be slightly longer. That's really just a personal thing because the fish can't see the top of the thing. But I just like the way it looks. So I come in here and I just trim away. Just start going. There. Now, get out of there. So, get this back here so you can see it. We'll get them all nice and cleaned up. Come in here and just, again, if it didn't, like maybe you made a little bad cut right now, if you come in and just pick at this a little bit, you can say, okay, there. This is what I was saying. When you work with deer hair and you make a bad cut, it's there forever. With wool, you can kind of go in and pick it out and, fix your mistake. You should see Johnny do that. Wow, it's something. So anyway, there you go. That's the base. You can see I've got, this is the longest part. I can still see the broad part of the head right here where it's nice and thick, because that's supposed to be a sculpin head. It's supposed to be broad. You know, you look at a sculpin, it's just like it goes when it goes right to a point. So what we've got here, you can see I've got this nice point coming back here. It's got a nice, thick, broad head. The head's going to compress slightly, so you make it a little bit bigger than you would, you know, than the finished product. I mean, when you see it wet, it's going to kind of get just a little bit less, but it's going to hold all that water. I think that's what makes wool so cool, is that it holds that shape and it holds the water. It gets a little translucency to it. From the bottom, I can still see my body, the reflectives part of the body. You put that in there for a reason, so you don't want to completely cover it. It's supposed to have a little bit of flash, got a nice broad head. See, my eyes look crooked. I come in here and I've got everything is just right. I can still see this fuzzy stuff off to the side. This fly has really, like I said earlier, this fly is, when things aren't right, this is the fly we go to. I hope you liked it. I know it was a little windy this time. Sorry about that. We had a lot of interruptions. I hope you liked it. I hope it helps you out.